Thanks for staying with us. This is Newsline. I'm Michael Chigani. With me is Mr. Lam Boon Kong, who is the Executive Council Convener and also the head of the Equal Opportunities Commission. Two very important positions you hold, Mr. Lam, and you're sandwiched in the middle between sometimes two competing things. But you know, we talked about government credibility, public trust in before the break, and you say that you know, it could get very shaky if things are not done right. And you did mention that Mr. Paul Chan Mabo, the new development secretary, and the issue of his subdivided flats, he has to clarify things, or is dragging down the government if he doesn't clarify things. The other thing that is dragging down the government is this whole issue of national education. In the beginning of the show, you mentioned minorities in Hong Kong. You protect their rights as Equal Opportunities Commissioner, and you did say, you pointed it out, that you need to have in schools a better Chinese teaching for minorities. Now that is an issue that's been on for a long time and is dragging down the overall performance of minority children. I'm not going to go into that issue, but I'm going to ask you this issue. If you don't teach the minority children in schools the Chinese language adequately, how can you impose national education on them? Isn't that a conflict there?
No,
you don't teach them the language, but you teach them the history and the background and the patriotism of that language?
Well, it's not that they don't teach Chinese in schools, they do, but the way that they are doing it is very ad hoc, unsystematic, and as a result, many, or indeed most, of the minority children are not learning well, and as a result, they fail, especially as they go high up in the ladder. Now, that is totally unsatisfactory and unacceptable, because small the numbers, maybe if they don't get on with education, they are stuck in poverty cross generation.
Right.
So that's why we are pushing it very strongly to the education authority. Now let's come back to national education. Now there have been the accusation or criticism saying that, you know, how can you ask minority children to love China when they are not even Chinese, you know?
Or they don't know the language.
But you see, one of the sad things in this particular controversy or debate is that people don't really try to understand the whole issue. People don't really read what is being said. Now, if you read carefully into the guide, I can even remember the paragraph 327 in page 64 of the guide. There's actually a special paragraph about ethnic minority. How do you teach ethnic minority a national education? And it said very clearly teachers should make accommodation for non-Chinese minority students so that they can learn about Hong Kong, which is obvious. I mean, if you settle in the city, you've got to learn about Hong Kong. Can also learn something about China, which is our sovereign state, which is again pretty natural. It's close to us. It's economically our biggest partner. No, it is natural,
because if you're an immigrant to America, whatever nationality you are taught to love America, because you've decided to settle there.
If you read that paragraph, there's nothing in that paragraph to say you must love China. Nothing in that paragraph. Just to ask you to learn something, to understand Hong Kong, understand China. So we are very liberal compared to Canada, Australia, United States, or Britain. We don't ask you to love the country. We just ask you to understand the country. So, I mean, if people read that particular paragraph, they don't need to worry about it.
But how do you understand the country? That is it. I mean, how do you actually teach people to understand the country?
The devil is in the detail. It depends on how you teach. And you go to another paragraph.
You can understand the country by loving the Communist Party.
Go to another paragraph, which is at the back of the guide. It's, I think, 524 or something, 524. It has an illustrated example of how you should teach about modern-day China, exactly on this particular point. And one of the sentences in there, in that particular illustrated example, said you can use core values such as human rights, such as democracy, to judge on what's happening in the country today. Now, isn't that liberal enough?
You know, again, like you say, it's the devil is in the details. How do you actually communicate all those things to the
then
students?
It depends on the teacher.
Exactly.
Then depends on the teacher. But the guy is giving total, full autonomy to the school, to the teachers, on how they want to teach it.
Can minority kids say, you know, I'm not, you know, a Chinese, therefore I want to opt out of that?
Well,
subject?
It is not
is it allowed?
It's not
because
a compulsion.
It's mandatory.
In the first instance, no, it's not a compulsory
It will
subject.
be in 3 years' time.
I doubt it if you read the guide very carefully, because schools can make accommodation for minority children. Now, if they don't think it is needs to take the time of the minority children on certain parts of the guide, then they can have the freedom to do that.
But even minority kids, let me get this straight, minority kids, even when it becomes compulsory 3 years from now for primary schools and later on for secondary schools, minority kids can still opt out?
The guide covers a whole range of subjects, from understanding yourself to the community to
but the question
Hong
is, can
Kong
they say,
to
I
the
don't
nation
I don't want to have national
to the
education?
world. Do you want your kid to understand what his role is in the world, in the global village?
Can they?
Do you want your kids to understand what his role is in Hong Kong society?
National education is a subject on its own.
You don't really need to teach them a lot about Chinese institutions if they are not Chinese, but you still can teach the rest of the 95% of the guide to them, understanding your role in family, understanding your role
about China. Can they opt out from that?
My reading of the guide is very, very liberal, and it is the full autonomy of the school to decide on how they want to teach and what they want to teach.
Okay, now, you know, I want to, I just got 5 minutes more, I want to move on. You know, the other thing about national education is that, you know, that some people have made accusations that people pushing it, like the Chief Secretary Carrie Lam Jiangyuk, that their own kids are in the UK. So many, you know, you were a government official. I don't know whether you send your kids to the UK.
Have no kids.
You have no kids, okay. But there are many other government officials who actually get an education allowance. And they send their kids overseas. Yet they're the people, they're promoting local people here to have national education. How can you do that? Isn't that morally not right?
Michael, let's go back to the fundamental desires and values of Hong Kong's parents. I mean, which parent, tell me, which parent doesn't want his or her kids to have the best education available, not just in Hong Kong but globally? Who else doesn't want that?
Every parent wants their kids to have the best education available.
Exactly. So
but the thing is, there is something wrong when the people who are asking you or promoting or applauding national education have their own kids abroad at taxpayers' expense.
Well, I mean, the welfare is part of the job, so let's not go into that. But I don't see anything morally wrong for a parent to send his or her kids to the best university in the world.
No, that's not the question. The question is, that is another issue. The issue is, if you do that, then why you say that the people who can afford to go overseas must have national education
here? If my daughter earns a scholarship in Cambridge, I would certainly put her to Cambridge.
Of course, but the majority of people here cannot afford to send their kids to Cambridge. They don't have taxpayers finance education allowances to like government officials.
But the allowances only go up to 19 for the university part. You pay out of your own pockets anyway. But let's not dwell on that. Come on, Michael. I think let's come back to national education. The real debate here is about whether that suits Hong Kong's core values. I think it's a battle of core values. Now, let me say this to the government, to the education secretary. I say, what's the rush? Let's be patient.
You think it should be delayed?
Let's be patient. Let's take the time that the subject needs on its own pace. Let's get the parents into a convinced
Have you
mode.
told the education secretary, Mr. Eddie,
I said it openly the other day. If you take it at its own pace, then things will be smoothed out. Now, to the opposition, I say this. It can be turned into a head you win, tail you also win game too. How? Turn it into national education with Hong Kong characteristics. Teach it with Hong Kong's core values in mind. Then how can you get wrong? It's one country, two system. We teach our kids Hong Kong's core values. How can we go wrong with that?
Should incidents like the June 4th crackdown be included in it then?
Read the guide. the suggestion that you use topical controversial issues
Tell me
to
very-
demonstrate how you teach national education.
it should
so
be there.
that can certainly be used.
It can be. So very quickly answer me this. Should it be called off? Should not there be voluntary national education this September when schools
Let's talk and let the debate take its own pace.
Do you think it should be delayed?
If it has to be in the end, then so be it. But at the moment, let's keep talking and let's see how the pace goes.
Okay. Yeah, I've just got a couple of minutes left. Since CY took over a month or so ago, he's faced all these scandals. Do you think he's got too many enemies out there?
Well, I mean, to be very blunt about it, I think he started off with a very controversial campaign behind him, and also not a very high level of public trust on him compared, say, to the previous two CEs when they got first started. So he's fighting on a lower trust platform. But the only way he can do it to gain public trust is to really show them his true color, politically and also socially. I mean, on his social policies. So he's got to be able to demonstrate to the public that he defends Hong Kong's core values, that he cares about the people, and that he really wants something to do something positive to Hong Kong. That's the only way. There's
Can
no
he
other
last
way.
5 years? Some people already said that he cannot last 5 years.
No, I don't really want to make speculations like that, but he surely is working very hard to gain the public trust. Yes, I
But you
can see
don't.
it.
You're not going to say whether you think he can go the full 5 years.
No, I'm not going to speculate on that, but he's working very hard on it.
Yeah, we all know he's working very hard, but because of all these scandals, surely every time a scandal appears, it's another cut.
It's very unfortunate, and that's why I hope all the controversies can be cleared out as soon as possible.
Thanks for watching. See you next week. Good evening.